Hey math lovers, Miss Amber here again. Today we're going to be talking about slope. But what is slope? Well, slope is the measure of the steepness of a line. So it tells you how steep a line is. So it's like walking up a hill or a mountain, right? The harder it is to climb, the steeper it is. The easier it is to climb, the less steep or more shallow it is. So something like the ground, that's really easy to walk on because it's flat, right? It has no steepness. So we say that the slope of something flat or horizontal is simply 0. Otherwise, the slope can be positive or negative. So if it's positive, that just means your line is moving upward. If it's negative, then that means your line is moving downward. So how do we find slope? Well, it kind of depends on what you're looking at. So if you're looking at a graph, you can just pick 2 points on a line and you can count what's called the rise over run between those 2 points. So you connect the points by drawing what looks like a right triangle, and you count the vertical distance on that right triangle, and you count the horizontal distance on that right triangle. So that vertical distance, that's going to be the change in your y values. The horizontal distance, that's going to be the change in your x values. So the change in your y values over the change in your x values creates a ratio that we call rise to run. And that tells you how steep your line is. Another way that you can find slope is you can use a formula. So you can take the 2 points that are actually on that line and you can plug them into a formula. So sometimes you might want to count it on the graph, sometimes you may not have a graph. So the formula is still the change in y over the change in x. So what does that look like? Well, that means we're subtracting our y values, and that's the numerator of our fraction, and we're going to put that over the denominator, which is going to be the difference between the x values. So we usually see that formula as y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. It's okay to switch them. So you might have y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. As long as the order stays the same when you subtract your points. So now let's look at an example. So say I have the point -3, 4 and the point 6, 2, and I want to find the slope between those 2 points. So I could plot them on a coordinate grid, and I could connect them with a slope triangle, and I can count the rise over the run. What I could also do is I can plug them into the formula that we just talked about. So if I do that, here's what it'll look like. So in our numerator, we're going to subtract our y values. So I'm going to go ahead and do 4 minus 2. In the denominator, and in the same order, I'm going to subtract my x values. So then I'm going to do -3 minus 6. So 4 minus 2, that's 2. -3 minus 6 is -9. So notice that makes the fraction -2/9. So that tells me the slope of that line. It's a negative line, it's going downward. It's less than 1 whole, so it's not very steep. One other way that you can find slope is when you look at an equation, but your equation must be in slope-intercept form. It could be in some other forms, but slope-intercept is the most common one and the easiest way to identify your slope. So what that looks like is y equals mx plus b. M is the variable that represents slope. Notice m is in front of the x. So the coefficient of x will always be what your slope is when you have an equation in slope-intercept form. And that's how you calculate the slope of a line. Hope that helps you calculate some slope. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.